United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Lori Durrance told us he would not be in attendance today. Commissioner Thompson will be here around 9.
Okay, thank you. I trust everybody's had an opportunity to review the agenda. If it wasn't implied, we're calling the meeting to order. And if there's no changes to the agenda, we'll go ahead and open for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to see a couple more updates on project updates.
Okay, well,
I'd like to see Rapid Systems kind of an update there, what's going on with different situations.
okay.
And then also, I'd mentioned one time about Conifer and equipment manufacturer out in Latham that was supposed to do some new facilities and all that. I just wondered if we've ever heard anything connected with those people in any way.
I can tell you that I spoke to Mr. Conifer himself, and he told me he was not interested in coming down to the county at this time. He said his family maybe at some point in the future, but right now they're not interested.
We'll go ahead and add Rapid to the item 8 project updates. Any other comments from board members? If not, we'll look for a motion to approve with the amended project updates. Any further discussion from the board? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we have minutes from our last 2 meetings to approve. That would be the May 13th minutes and the May 27 minutes. There was one item on the May 13th minutes I just wanted to bring to the attention of the board to see if we wanted to have that reworded under the bio-nitrogen inducement resolution, second paragraph. The second sentence, they are seeking the IDA to issue bonds in an amount to not exceed $300 million. I think we should change that to say they are seeking the IDA to approve a bond issuance not to exceed $300 million. I did already mention that to Christie. So I'd like to proffer that as a correction to the minutes. Any further discussion from the board members? If not, we will open for a motion to approve the May 13th minutes. And to clarify, Gene, is that with the recommended? Thank you. Do you have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We'll open for a motion on the May 27th minutes. Do we have a motion on the May 27th minutes for approval?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll go ahead and move into the South Florida State College Hardy County SBDC agreement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. The first item for consideration on the agenda would be an agreement that we have approved for the last several years with South Florida State College. It is with the Small Business Development Center. They are run as a component of USF through South Florida State College. The primary function or service that they perform for the Economic Development Council is business advisement and budget preparation for those people that come to us seeking advice. Some move on to seek funding, some go on and try to do their own thing, some turn away and decide they do not want to proceed with whatever their idea was. I believe they've performed a really good function for us in that a lot of people come into our office with a good business idea, and once they're confronted with actually developing a business plan and a functional budget, at some point the reality that their idea may not work from an economic standpoint hits them. And we don't, we prefer them to persevere and try to carry it out to fruition, but in most instances, when people are confronted with the reality of trying to develop a real, true business plan, they either revise, go into remission, they just don't come back. But they have performed a very good service for us, and we'd like to continue this contract. I believe the amount of it is $3,500 a year, is that right? So I'm recommending that we continue our contract.
And this is a contract that we've had in place and funded for several years now, I believe. I would agree with Bill that this organization does an excellent job helping us to walk new companies through the process. If it's not something that's ready for a grant or to approach economic development, they can help them work through the process and establish their business plan. I believe we've had a couple of our clients that we have actually worked with that have gone through this process as well. So,
Is there a list of how many parties?
They have confidentiality agreements with who they work with.
Okay, never mind.
And I can kind of, through recollection, give you a list of some people.
Never mind.
Well, it's a legal word.
Confidential. Everything's confidential. I didn't ask for names, Bill. I said how many. Because when you have how many.
Well, I'll be more than,
Just curious.
I'll be more than happy to set you up a meeting with him if you'd like.
Well, there should have been.
Well, okay,
Somebody should have been.
we can postpone and I'll have them come.
No, we've done this before. I'm fine. I just thought you would have an answer.
I don't have an answer.
Well, somebody should have been.
Well, they're not.
I realize that. Okay.
any further discussion from board members?
Do we recommend that any of our people that apply check this out and try to get it?
Yes, everyone.
Any other comments or discussion from board members? If not, we will open for a motion to approve. And do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion from the board? Any public comment? If not, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll move into Clifton Larson Allen.
This time I'd like to call Mike Carter, please, to give us a report on audits, pending audits, status of agreed to procedures, examinations, etc.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. For the record, my name is Mike Carter, principal of Clifton Larson Allen. It's a pleasure to be here today. Would like to give you a status update of our examination. I guess to back up, I should kind of talk about what we've selected as a sample and what we've looked at so far. There were 29 draws between the life sink and the continuum pieces. And so when we talked initially, we said we would look at 25%. So 25% of the 29 came out to be about 7 draws. So we're we're looking at 7 draws right now. Of those 7, we've completed 5, and we're wrapping up the last 2. But those 7 really constitute 41% of the dollars. So we're looking at 25% of the draws, 41% of the dollars. That's largely because on the LifeSync piece, there's an API fee of $615,000. That was one that we selected. That was a one-time fee, and so that and the other ones that we selected had development costs associated with it, and some of the draws didn't have development costs. So there, some of them are like 41, 38,000, and some of them are 472, and the first one is 877,000. So we selected our sample on the number of draws as opposed to the dollars, but we are looking at more than 25% of the dollars. We're looking at 25% of the draws. So, like I said, right now we've completed 5, and I apologize it's taking this long. We started it in the busiest time of year, and then we've had to stop and start waiting to get information as we had questions. It took us a while in the beginning just to get our arms around the whole process in the organization. So Bill also mentioned that, and the board had asked for a quote to do another 25%, and how much it would be for the 100%. And I think at this point, it'd be about $15,000 per 25% is what it looks like. So we should have a draft report within the next week, and I should be able to sit down, go over the questions that we have with Bill, and we can take it from there. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
So, Mike, you have invoiced us for $12,000. You're saying the initial 25% review will run approximately 15, and everything thereafter will run 15. Is that a quote or an estimate, or?
That's an estimate. So far, I think we've invoiced 20,000, and we've got 25,000 in it to date.
So the first 25 was 25,000.
Right.
And thereafter will be 15,000 per 25.
Right.
And that, as I recollect, when you came before the board the first time, the board agreed for you to look at 25% of the transactions, which would be some differing amount of the money. And you would come back to us with this estimate that you're here today for.
Right.
Any other questions from board members?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And while Donald's preparing, during your review, anything that you feel the board should be apprised of, or that you would like us to notate so far?
Not so far. I really don't feel comfortable until we get everything together and investigate any questions that we have to date.
Go ahead, Donald.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
when this thing first started, we was working on whether we were going to do an audit for 25% agreed on procedures. And this board was adamant we were not going to do an audit. Okay, so what the board did was to agree for 25% agreed on procedures. Now I keep hearing the word examination. Now in this that was passed by this board says this is not going to be an examination, an audit or a review. So we're paying for an examination, not 25% agreed on procedures. Is that right?
Our firm would not approve this as an agreed upon procedure engagement.
Wait a minute. Now, this board agreed on procedures. If you proceeded with something else, then you had to come back to this board to get another agreement. What you're doing, you should get paid for agreed on procedures of 25%, not an examination, because this board did not approve you to do an examination.
I can tell you an examination is more in depth than agreed upon
I
procedures.
agree, but we're paying for it extra. But this board did not tell you to do an examination. That's what I'm saying. This board was adamant. They said a 25% agreed on procedures was all they wanted. and it was voted on. Now, if somebody told you to do more, then they need to pay the bill.
Well, I can't do agreed upon procedures. If you don't want an examination, we can refund the money and I can withdraw from the engagement.
Why didn't you come back to the board and say, we cannot do this? Because if you remember, I asked you a question, why would you get involved in something like this with this agreed on procedures? Why would you, somebody who I've known for years and trusted, why would you get yourself involved in something like this? But you went ahead and did it anyway.
Well, at the time, I thought that was the route we should go. But there were, agreed upon procedures are very specific. You can't deviate from what is on there. You can't, if you find something else, you can't go down that path. You can't look at anything else but what you agree.
That's right, and I tried to make that statement, and I tried to get that across, and it didn't work for me personally. It didn't work. And you sat there and agreed to do it, knowing you couldn't do it. Now, what you've done.
I don't think it's fair to say that he knew at that time that he couldn't do
Oh,
it.
come on. He's been doing this for 30 or 40 years.
Mr. Samuels, I did not know at the time that I could not do it. Our firm has gotten very strict on agreed upon procedures engagements. And it's been something fairly a recent development in our firm, and it's firm policy. So.
Well, you should have came back to this board and said, look, we can't do this. We've got to do an examination. And I'm sure this board would have said, okay. But you didn't do that. You went ahead and did it on your own, or you were told by somebody to do it without a board vote. That's my point. This board did not vote to allow you to do an examination. It's right here what we were going to pay you to do.
Like I said, if you don't want us to do this, we can refund the money and I can withdraw from the engagement.
It's fine with me.
May I make a comment?
Absolutely.
As I recollect the discussion back when we had it several months ago, it appeared to be that the intent of this review was to be as comprehensive as we could. And we're operating under a contract, and there had been some calls for even a forensic audit. A forensic audit would not be in, I know, but it wouldn't be in the purview of what we do. So as we moved through this process, we moved from an agreed to procedures to an examination. They're all strictly types of audits. They're types of audit. I mean, there's not one particular type of audit going on. There's multiple types of audits.
Agreed on procedures and audit.
No, it's not an audit.
Okay.
Well, it's,
As I explained earlier,
Mike,
I don't think you want an audit. I don't think that's what you're looking for. What you're looking for is really more in the realm of an examination. An examination is like an audit of just a particular element where you don't have to go and look at internal controls and do all the other things that
Well, why didn't you make that recommendation with the 25% of?
At the time, I thought agreed upon procedures was the way to go.
did your legal staff tell you you could not do the agreed to procedures?
Yes.
And they suggested that
Well,
it be referred to as an examination.
That was their suggestion. Yes.
And what is the substantive difference between an agreed to procedures and an examination?
Agreed upon procedures, as I stated, is you tell us exactly what you want us to do, and we don't do any more, we don't do any less. We do exactly what you tell us. An examination is we go in and we, in this case, we're going to render an opinion on whether these expenditures that we looked at were supported by documentation and were allowable cost.
What would have changed had we, let's say this, what would have changed in the process you just finished in the review of looking at 25% of the transactions, whether it was called agreed upon procedures, excuse me, or examination? What differences would there have been in that review?
First of all, the report would be different. The report on agreed upon procedures and said, we would say, you have asked us to do the procedures listed in attachment A, and we'd list out every procedure that you wanted us to do. And that was all we would do. We would do no more, no less. And some of those items that we couldn't, anything that involves objectivity or subjectivity, I mean, it could not be an agreed upon procedure. And if we found something different, if we needed to go look at some different information, we could not do that. So all we would say in our report is, we've done these procedures, and these are what we found.
And the difference.
The examination will say that we have examined the reimbursement request of continuing the life sync and to supporting documentation. And in our opinion, they're fairly supported, except for anything that we would list out. So it's more in the line of an audit, which is, Mr. Samuels, I thought was what you wanted to begin with.
That's what I wanted. But what I want is for you to do what this board tells you to do. You know, I lose a lot of votes on this board. But if you've been here for the last 3 or 4 months, when this board says, we voted, we're done, it's over, don't bring it back, we move on. That's what got Horace kicked off this board. And now you basically done the same thing Horace did. You did not go by the board vote, and it says right here, you wrote this, Mike. It's got your signature on it. That it says, this does not constitute an examination, audit, or review. 25% agreed on procedures is all. Now, if you needed to do an examination, what I'm saying is you should have come back to this board, for this board to look at it and say yes or no. And I'm sure they'd have said yes.
Well,
Okay, so here's where I feel like we are at. Mike has said he will withdraw, refund the fees. We're at a place where we can either agree to do this as an examination, understanding the cost will be $25,000, or we can let them know that we'd like them to withdraw from this obligation. So, that's where we are. So what is the pleasure of the board?
I'd actually like to understand a little bit better how we got from agreed to procedures. I understand your company pushed back. How did the process work? Whereas we turned it to an examination.
well,
How did that approval process? What occurred to make that transition?
in the time that we first talked till when we got around to getting this approved, there was a new process put in place at our firm where all agreed upon procedures had to be approved by a technical committee. And when we said that we were going to look at 25%, that doesn't comply with agreed upon procedures. We would have to say we are going to look at W-2s, 1099s, American Express bills. We would have to lay out to that kind of detail to be an agreed upon procedure. If we found something different and it was not listed in those procedures, and we wouldn't be able to do it. An examination is essentially performing an audit. We write up a program, we say we're going to perform these steps, we determine the steps instead of you. And we say we're going to do these steps so we can render an opinion on, in this case, the support of the reimbursement request.
Clearly, your company has a certain set of guidelines that they follow when they take on a new engagement. And when they looked at this one, it didn't meet the criteria. So at some point, somebody inside your firm had to approve you modifying the engagement some way. But as Tim Hunt, you did so without an agreement with this board. So I'm curious how inside your company, or however it happened, how we got from looking at a set of procedures that we couldn't do to an examination which didn't have an agreement behind it.
Oh, that was my fault. I thought that this board was interested in getting it done as quickly as possible, and we were trying to push forward, and I understood that you wanted us to look at the support behind the reimbursement request. That was a priority, and so we continued down that route. I should have come back to the board, but quite honestly, I've been out of town a lot for the last 3 months. And I've been out of town every board meeting you've had for the last 3 months.
In Mike's defense too, he did tell me that we were changing relative to Clifton Larson Allen's perspective from agreed upon procedures to an examination. We had a discussion on at least 2 occasions. I told this board that we would be moving from an agreed upon procedures to this type of examination. I still am unclear as to what the relative difference in the cost is. But I had honestly felt like the objective of the board in entering this process was to produce any and all information relative to some type of review so that we could placate those persons in the public that felt like that maybe there was something with this project that wasn't done properly. So I'm a bit confused as to why.
The cost is essentially the same as what I quoted you for the agreed upon procedures, if I remember correctly.
I really did not understand when I talked to him that there was going to be any significant financial impacts other than the legal result of an examination relative to Clifton Larson Allen's liability, as opposed to agreed upon procedures, was perceived differently by their legal staff. And it just,
Well, you fought this thing tooth and nail, now you agree to all of it.
Well, I think
did
that.
not, no.
I did tooth and nail,
I did
man.
not.
Yes, you did.
I did not. I have supported it. I have supported it. I have called. I did. I'm on
Well,
record.
see, you call agreed on procedures and an audit the same thing though, see, Bill, that's
Why
what
would you
gets
say, wait a
confusing.
minute, why would you say that?
Because you have said that before.
I think that the issue that we've gotten into is, in order for you to review the supporting documentation for the draws and the depth that we've asked you to, you were not able to do that under what you originally proposed. And that's where you would have had to go further into an examination. Is that
That's
kind of
correct.
sum up what you're explaining? So you wouldn't have been able to review all of those things that you mentioned previously to support the draws had you not moved this to an examination.
That's correct. An examination gives us a lot more latitude to change our procedures based on what we're finding when we get out there in the field. And before we started the procedures, we weren't sure what we were going to get into. And with agreed upon procedures, you essentially have to define that before you start the engagement, which was difficult to do with this one because we weren't familiar with the company.
John?
It seems to me we need a pretty intense examination and audit. And we can sit here all day and won't think of what might have happened or what we should have done. So I think our discussion needs to be that do we want examination or not, so we can get on down the road.
Okay, well, what are we going,
I'll make a motion that we
Okay, you make
we
it.
have an examination,
To what percent?
that 25%.
We've done examination at 25. The issue before you today is, I suppose at this point, is to convert from agreed to procedures to the formality of examination and an intensity level of 50, 75, or 100% at an additional cost of $15,000 per 25%.
Or leave it at 25% where it is now. Right, whatever the board's pleasure is.
Mike, what would you recommend in this situation?
I think in this situation, I'd leave it at 25% because I don't know if we're going to find a very much difference. I think we're going to find the same types of things that we found if we do 50% as we did 25%. You know, like I said, we're looking at 25% of the draws, but especially because that one API, that one-time charge up front kind of skews the dollars. But I don't think you're going to find a lot of differences. Or I don't think we're going to find a lot of things different if we look at 50% versus 25%. But that's certainly up to the board.
We do have a motion on the floor, and, I do think that in order to amend what we did previously request for Clifton Larson Allen to do, with this additional explanation that Mike has given us, I do think that we need to entertain the motion to move from rules of procedure into an exam. If we want to additionally entertain an additional percentage, we can do that as well, but I think at the minimum, we need to go ahead and entertain the motion that John has made to move into the examination and move forward with this with Clifton Larson Allen. Is that?
Yes, and we could add that if Mike sees he needs to examine more, make a percentage, then come back to us. It was 50%, 25. I mean, that's pretty obvious, I guess, a little bit of 25. I mean, we spent millions of dollars here. We want to find out what's happened, so I think, if we spend a few more $1,000 on something that's needed, that's what we need to do.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion from board members?
What John has just done here is the same thing that this commissioner's kicked Hoist off this board. I just want everybody to understand that. What's going on here today. This is twice.
Keep your comments on the subject.
That is the subject.
No, we're not discussing
It is
horse.
the subject.
That's not a subject.
That's what got him kicked off his board. He's doing what he just did.
We are discussing the
It
examination.
is the thing.
We're discussing moving from what we originally asked them to do into an examination. We're not discussing horse.
I'll do it at the end of the meeting then.
That's your pleasure.
Okay. All right, you're trying to stop me. That's normal.
Yes, I am. That's my job.
That's right.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion from board members?
I do have, I know I made the second, but I do have a question. So if you give us this initial 25% examination, and there is some determination by the board that we want another 25% of the transactions examined, is that something that readily flows from what you will present us in this first examination report?
It would. I mean, we would just build on what we've already done.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments or discussion from board members? Any public comment? Mr. Clark, please state your name for the record.
You already know it, you just said it. Robert Cole, Wachula. You know, there's a whole lot wrong here. A whole lot. First of all, this alleged non-audit got changed. Bill knew about it, and he didn't tell the board. 3 meetings, and he didn't tell the board. Don brings it up this morning. You think Bill would pipe up and say, wait a minute, I knew about this. But no, he didn't do that until he was forced to. This guy, he reported it to Bill like he should have, and apparently I'm thinking, well, he must think it was implied consent, because Bill didn't tell him you need to bring that back to the board. He didn't tell the auditor. He didn't tell the board. What he's done is far worse than anything Orr's ever did. He's just an employee. And he let this board down. I mean, this is embarrassing what's going on here this morning, and it all sits right there. But you're not going to do anything about it, are you?
Any further public comment? If not, I'd like to address Mr. Cole's comment. Mike, if you would, approximately how long ago did Bill and Ken and I drive up to meet with you in Lakeland?
It was a couple of weeks ago.
I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago approximately. And is that the first time that we collectively discussed that the technicalities of this moving from agreed upon procedures into an examination?
It was the first time we got into detail about it, yes.
So this is the first board meeting since we had a detailed discussion about what that would look like or mean that it's being presented back to the board.
This is the first board meeting since we had that discussion, and I think it's only the second since I found out from the powers that be in my firm that we couldn't do it, and I was out of town last board meeting, so I was not available to come make that presentation.
And was it requested of you to be here today to have this discussion with the board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just straighten me out, Vanessa. I heard Mike say that his firm decided not to do this. Now I find out that you, Bill, and Ken goes up there and I guess presents this to them to do this, or what?
No, we did not present.
We didn't know anything about it.
We did not present anything. We asked Mike if he were available, since we had not had an opportunity for him to come and give the board an update. We called Mike to ask if he were available to give us an update so that we could have him come back to the meeting and present the information. No, we did not request nor present the request to have an examination. This was not our idea. There's no conspiracy here that we drummed up. We asked Mike if we could meet with him to discuss the audit. Mike agreed, and he informed us of the details of moving into an examination.
In the past, have you ever went up there and asked for an update on the 25% procedures? I mean, what's the reason to jump in a car and run up there when you've never done this before to check on an audit or agreed on procedures?
To my knowledge, there was concern from you and other board members presented in the meeting as to why we haven't had them come back in the meeting in the past.
Yeah, but you have to drive all the way to Lakeland to do that.
I was going to Lakeland for a meeting anyway, so I don't understand why the details of,
Ken and Bill goes with you to Lakeland all the time?
when it's IDA business, I would expect.
Well, this is very unusual for y'all to do this, is what I'm getting at.
I don't think it's unusual.
Reason.
I don't think it's unusual for a board chair to be involved in an audit at the request of the board.
But y'all getting together and driving to Lakeland, that seems kind of
I
odd.
didn't drive with them to Lakeland. I don't know what you're implying, Donald, but I think you need to stop.
You got it.
Okay, any other questions or comments from board members? We have a motion on the table that has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Let the record show that Donald voted against moving from agreed upon procedures to an examination.
Under the circumstances. Put that, and make sure that's in there, under these circumstances. I voted no.
Okay, any further questions or for Clifton Larson Allen? If not, thank you, Mike. We appreciate the presentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And we will move into bond guidelines and procedures. Mr. Evers.
Board members, you have before you a draft of what is the Charlotte County Industrial Development Authority's policies and guidelines when it comes to these industrial revenue bonds and applications. Staff went through, and you have kind of a red line version where they went through and changed Charlotte and Hardee so you could see where the tweaks were. We're not asking you to vote on these or adopt these this morning. I still need to go through them. There are multiple references. These things were adopted, I think, back in 2006. There are multiple statutory references. There are multiple internal revenue code references. I need to make certain all those are still accurate and everything in it is where it cross-references statute provisions, et cetera, are all still accurately recited. I don't believe there's anything of any real contentiousness in this thing for debate. There is a section in here, it kind of describes, it's good reading for you, it kind of describes the process and why people do these things and how they do these things. I'll tell you that there is a section over on page 18 of your packet, I guess it is, it's about the 7th or 8th page of the procedures that talks about an application fee and a financing fee. Anytime you're charging a fee of any kind, that has the potential at least to be contentious, so I'll point that out to you if you want to. Bill, my thought was coming back at the next meeting for adoption, based on whether or not, but using these procedures to process bio-nitrogen in the meantime, meaning that they'll understand that this is the procedure we're going to use, but formally adopt at the next meeting, unless the board wants to do otherwise. If you want to adopt it, that's fine, but I wanted to point out to you, the only thing in there that I saw that had any sort of potential for contentiousness is application fees and financing fees. You see, application fees of $2,500 for bonds that are going to amount to something over $5 million, and then financing fees down there are outlined the way they are. These are, I think Charlotte County was selected because it was the most similar to our setup. The employees down there, at least at the time that these were adopted, I haven't confirmed since, where they were set up almost identically to the way we are. Their employees are EDC employees, but they have an IDA. It seemed to match pretty much our setup, so that's why these were selected.
And I met with both the Charlotte County Economic Development Director and the former Collier County Economic Development Director, and a couple of interesting things I learned. Tom Patton, who was with the Central Florida Development Council in Polk County, moved to Charlotte County maybe 2 years ago, and he told me, to his knowledge, Charlotte County had never done a 159 bond issue. He was not familiar, but he agreed that he was the staff to do this if he was to do it. Collier County, on the other hand, the person there, her name is Tammy Nemechek, told me that they had done many of them and that they were a fantastic tool, and she felt like that the Collier County application was a really good application. You know, when it came down to the ones that I was looking at, I felt like Collier and Charlotte were going to be two of the best ones, but we may want to go back and look at the component differences between Collier County and Charlotte County. And, you know, from my perspective in reading them both, I just felt like the Charlotte County one was much easier for the layman to understand. It's better written, and the Collier County one looks more like a zoning and planning application that you get from the zoning and planning office. But they're both good documents, and I just, as we pull together the final copy, we may want to make certain that there's not some components in Collier counties that we didn't look at, because I know it has been tested many times.
Well, I was not aware of those conversations, but I mean, the intent today was to not ask you to vote on this, but it's in your packet. You've got the chance to review it, and if any of you have comments, you can get with me, email me or call me, and we can discuss them. And Bill, we can sit down and work through, extract from the Collier process anything we think might fit well or look well, and come back to you next month with a complete compiled package after you've had a chance to digest this.
They did relate to me that when these things occur, most of them are in the health-related fields.
Ken, on page 14, can you tell me why all those were excluded? Because Mark,
I cannot.
You didn't do that.
I didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you why, because they're more comprehensive than that. I felt like it was misleading. I want to insert every project defined in 159.
Each one of those line items does have a specific definition in the statute, but I did not do that.
I just want to list them all, Donald. There's 2 pages of
All right.
So the intent, I had the same question that Donald did, wanting to know where that came from and where the project qualifications, but what you're saying is what we're going to insert there in place of that is going to be much more thorough than.
It's going to have definitions for each one of those categories.
Any other questions or comments from board members regarding what is presented? So we'll continue to move forward with review and development of this document to come back at the next board meeting.
And if any of you have any questions about any of it after having a little while to digest it, call me or email me, and we'll talk about it and incorporate comments, so we have a more complete document for next time, be ready for adoption.
Ken, has there been any more conversation with Henry or Taylor counties on this?
I haven't had any. I don't know if Bill has, but have you had any other communication with Hendry or Taylor counties on any of this stuff with bionitrogen?
From what date? Not recently. I mean, I've talked to them, but not with anything specific that would be new revelations relative to this. I talked to Duke Power, but nothing new. It's just moving through the process. We do have another proposal that will go into that in more depth today.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, we will go ahead and move into marketing. I believe Kristen has a presentation for us.
Good morning. I was initially put on the agenda because if you recall, I had budgeted $13,700 for a Florida Trend advertisement. And since doing the budget, they have come out with a Heartland edition they're doing in September. So I was wanting to get the board's opinion if you wanted to do both or stick with the one ad we had already budgeted for. But I've been able to speak with Florida Trend and get both ads for the $13,000 price. So I just want to take this time to do a marketing update. Our website is complete as well as our logo design. So we're now in the phase of kind of rebranding our economic development office. I'm in the works of doing a county profile. I'm about to get it printed, and so we'll be able to give companies who come into our office that profile, and it has all of our demographics, almost like a printed version of our website. And then we'll also be able to mail that out to site selectors and get some rack cards printed out as well. We're going to be updating our business cards. I'm going to start our constant contact email newsletter again. And we went to the FEDC conference this weekend, and I attended a class, and it was about education, how promoting the education in your community. And I had never thought about Florida and us being able to promote Florida's Bright Future and Florida Prepaid as an incentive to companies who are moving here from out of the state. So I'll be adding that to our website as well. So just wanted to update you with everything that's going on in our marketing. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for Kristen? Great job on getting both those ads for what we budgeted. And the website also looks very good and very professional, so good job on that. Thank you. Before we move into project updates, why don't we take a brief 5-minute break, and if we can return at 9:35, we will go ahead and, my apologies, I think that I'm a little ahead of my schedule here. 9:25 we'll return, so we will take a brief recess.